I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. This is probably one of the most commonly misunderstood passages in all of Scripture. You've probably seen a piece of Christian artwork, a tattoo, writing under the eyes of your favorite football or baseball player. This verse is everywhere, and more often than not, it's entirely taken out of its context to mean something that was not intended. You see, no doubt, there are many who have abused this passage. And it's saddening, because this is not talking about Christians achieving great things for themselves. Whatever we want to do, whatever our fleshly desires are, God will then give us the strength to fulfill them. Doesn't that seem silly? Think about our context here. Think about the passage we just read. Also think about Paul's situation. He says, I have learned the secret to facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. How can Paul, who's in prison, face hunger and need and still be content? Because of Christ, who gives him strength. You see, he's not talking about achieving worldly things. He's talking about enduring suffering for Jesus. How can Paul endure suffering and still be content? Because of the supernatural work of Christ in his life. He's not doing it in his own strength. He's doing it by the power of Christ at work in his life. You see, there is nothing that you cannot endure for Jesus. Christ will supply you the strength to serve Him in all of your circumstances. That's the promise here. I was thinking about the strength of Christ. I think a far more accurate example of what Paul is talking about here, as opposed to the example of athletes painting it on them, referencing winning games or championships. I think a far more accurate example is the example of a woman named Blandina. If you think you have it bad today, listen to this. Under Emperor Marcus Aurelius, over a Roman holiday, a period of about 30 days, Christians were dragged into an amphitheater and tortured for entertainment. One of these Christians was a woman named Blandina. The church historian Eusebius, he recorded Blandina's martyrdom for us. He says this: on the last day of the contest in the amphitheater, Blandina was again brought in with Ponticus, a boy of about 15. Every day they had been brought to witness the sufferings of others and pressed to deny their faith and swear by idols. Ponticus died first, and Blandina remained the last. She had encouraged many others and saw them go on before her to Jesus. Now she was ready to hasten after them. She faced her death rejoicing, as if being called to a marriage feast rather than wild beast. Her tormentors were amazed that she continued to breathe after her whole body was pierced and torn asunder. In the midst of her sufferings, as for a moment she revived, she repeatedly exclaimed, "I am a Christian." Amongst the things that Blandina experienced, she was chained up over hot coals, scorched. She was hung from a rope and fed to wild animals. She was forced to sit on a hot iron seat, and then she was finally strung up and trampled over by a bull. You see, all she had to do to make it stop was renounce Christ. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Can you do that? Because what we are learning from Paul is that through the work of Christ, we can be content, have joy, hope, and peace in any circumstance.